How's it going, everyone? Spencer Reynolds here with Fujikura Golf, and welcome to our third installment of our YouTube series. It's all about VeloCore technology. We've spoken about the technology itself, we've talked about our flagship product with Ventus, and now it's time to talk about the next generation of Ventus, which is Ventus TR. I'm joined today with Marshall Thompson, our tour representative. We're going to talk about how TR came to be, what we learned from original Ventus, from tour, some tour stats, and some cool stories.
Yeah, and I'm excited to share some of the feelings that tour players have had with the new TR from the original Ventus, and we'll discuss some of the player benefits, and yeah, excited to get into it.
Sounds great. Marshall, we've had incredible success with the Ventus line of product. Initially started with the blue, added a red and black. We've seen tour adoption be very, very strong. We've seen consumer adoption be very, very strong. And so what we do here at Fujikura is innovate, right? It's time to go back to the drawing board. It's always time to do anything we can to improve our products. Always want to deliver ultimate performance and better golf to the golfer. So when we look at a profile like Ventus and we decide we want to make some changes, right? Or we want to look at what it actually does on a performance scale and how we can make it better, your department is one of our first stops, right? We go to the tour and say, what are you hearing? What are you learning? And if we rewind the clock to before TR existed and we talk about just the Ventus Blue profile specifically, and we can talk about the others as we go through, but when we came to your team and said, what have you noticed as far as tour adoption with that specific profile? What was some of the feedback that you got initially?
Originally, the Ventus Blue, it felt great, right? But for guys that we're seeing, especially for tour swing speeds and even the junior college amateur, swing speeds are going up and they're getting faster and players are loading it more aggressively and harder. And so it began to feel a little too soft.
In that handle section.
In the handle section. And so, you know, coming up to engineering and testing something that would potentially, you know, give us the ability to have something a little bit stiffer in the handle, guys that could retain that load and store that energy through the hitting area, and still get the control and the consistency, face control and centerness of contact that they're getting from VeloCore and the original Ventus. So that was our main priority, was just to get something that was a little bit stiffer in the handle.
And you do have players that would say maybe have a more aggressive transition and you would logically sort of shift them into like a Ventus Black type profile, but there are players that have a lot of speed and transition that do sort of like the extra feel and kick in a profile that's not quite as boardy as a Ventus Black would be. So the idea would be, how do we channel that? How do we take the same profile idea and take your feedback from tour and start to integrate that? And a big part of that is really just Enzo analytics. So after that feedback, what we do is we take that back and we put this on a 10 camera motion capture system, a few thousand frames per second. And what we did notice is that at higher ball speeds and more aggressive transitions, you can see a little bit of twist and oscillation in that shaft. And that's what's so cool about sort of pairing data with tour feedback. As we know, tour players have incredible feel. They're not always the best at relaying technical information. What they can just tell you is it feels a little soft or it feels a little too much play. But we can actually quantify that in this room and understand where that is. So that becomes an engineering challenge then of how can we create a stiffer part that's only stiffer in a particular section while maintaining the overall integrity of the profile. And the first step of that is, you know, the easy step would just be put material there, right? You can just stiffen up graphite by adding wraps, adding plies. Given that location at the sort of base of the handle section, top part of the midsection, where your players are saying they feel that softness, too much weight and too much material starts to create a counterbalance shaft, which is not really what we're looking for, right? And so we start to explore materials that are lighter in weight, that are stronger, that can increase torsional stiffness. And that's where we land on this sort of spread toe integration technology. That's material that can take load and stress in a lot of different directions, and it's very, very light. So we can actually place that strategically on the shaft where your players told us, hey, I'm feeling a little bit too much play, a little bit too much action. And we can only add a couple of grams to the overall shaft and then create a profile that is a more stout version than the original. So it's not replacing original Ventus Blue, it's just sort of a stiffer part. And what we saw once we integrated that material and we spec'd it out is that we did increase torsional stiffness in the section your players mentioned by about 10%. So we can package that up, we can test it, but again, we're gonna bring it back to your team to take it out in the field. And so when we took that to the desert and we tested it, you know, what was the player feedback, you know, on your team, on your side?
Yeah, I think having, you know, the new TR with that spread toe fabric and getting a little bit increased stability and bending and also torsionally where a shaft deforms the most, right? So when a player loads a shaft, there's a lot of deformation that's occurring, whether it's in twist or whether it's in lead getting back to the ball. And that can potentially have some impacts on launch. It can have some impacts on start direction in terms of where that face is orientated. And so I think most of the players saw even more consistency than the original, which was crazy to me because the original Ventus was incredibly good. It still is incredibly good, and it fits a wide variety of players. But to have these three options for guys that loaded extremely hard and aggressive, and having a shaft that doesn't deform and as much and allows them to control that face even further, then it was three more options to have in our fitting lineup. And it was beautiful because that extra stiffness provided from that material slotted these shafts in between their old predecessors, right? So the red was between, the red and the blue. The TR blue was now in between the blue and the black, and the TR black was an option that was for, we call them the mutants of the world, right?
Yeah,
the guys that are swinging 124 miles an hour that, they need a piece of rebar to hold on to. And so we had something that worked extremely well for that type of player. So to have 6 options now with the original Ventus with VeloCore, now the Ventus TR, there isn't anybody on this planet that I can't fit.
And what's great from a design standpoint and really just a technology standpoint is we are keeping the guts the same. It's the same VeloCore tech that's in the original Ventus. We're just looking at ways to pretty much enhance the performance of that. And you alluded to adding the red and the black later. We started with the blue just like we did with the original. We kind of added the bookend pieces where you have a higher launch version. We've seen a lot of really cool adoption on tour with TR Red, which is cool to see.
Yeah.
Typically a profile you would start to say, well, tour players don't really need to hit it up in the air. But like you've spoken about past, players need spin, especially with fairway woods and things like that. Iron lofts are getting stronger and woods are spinning less. And the really cool thing to see is that when we break these profiles down into a mid-launch, a high launch, and a low launch, it's important to remember that those are relative to themselves, right? So a Ventus Red or a Ventus TR Red may be a high launching shaft for the family, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a shaft that kicks it straight up in the air. So, you've spoken about this before in fitting. It's important to try all the options, right? And you even do that on tour. A tour player has a request, you're going to build them a couple options, probably a couple you think will stick, and then a couple just to try. Yeah,
and the adoption rate of the Ventus TR has been extremely fast. It's grown. Is seeing a lot of these pop up in a lot of bags, and I'm just excited to have six Ventus parts that allow me to fit the best players in the world, and the consumers have to be extremely happy too because they're picking up distance gains and controlling the face, playing their best golf just because of these options that are available to them.
It's fantastic. So Ventus and Ventus TR live together, 6-profile system. There's a mid, a high, and a low in each one. All have VeloCore technology. Ventus TR just integrates a little bit of that spread toe material towards the handle section to give a little more stability, a little lower launch and lower spin, but still exceptional feel and exceptional consistency.
Yep.
That's awesome. All right, Marshall, thanks so much for your time today. Thank you all for watching and learning a little bit more about Ventus TR, sort of our most current Ventus model, how it falls into our lineup. Thanks for the tour stories, thanks for the stats, and you guys stay tuned for our final installment about Axiom iron shafts.